Welcome back to the Rebel Tech channel. I'm Justin, and in this video we are talking about the Zoom F6 1.9 firmware update. This is the second firmware update of 2022. And after last year, 2021, only getting one update, it's nice to see work being put into the Zoom F6, which it's a definite. I have a bias. I cover this thing a lot. I use it a lot. And it's nice to see time and effort put into it. Now, it might not exactly fix anything that I've been looking for, and it also may not affect me very much, but there are other people out there that may be affected by these updates. But before we get into the update itself, let's have a refresher on how to update the firmware in the Zoom F6. And if you've seen this before in my first update video, just skip ahead to the next chapter and I will talk about what this update has to offer. But to everyone else who hasn't had the chance to check out those older updates, let's talk about how to update the firmware. Okay, so it's very simple. Start off by going to the Zoom website, link down in the description, and download the zip file for the update. Then you're going to extract the folder from the zip file so that you can access it properly. Otherwise, it's a compressed file, and you know the whole thing. If you know computers and you know how this stuff works, you're gonna have to do that. But if you don't, extract the file and unzip the file. At this point, you're going to have a SD card on hand and take the bin file, the .bin file, and copy it and paste it into the SD card. This SD card will be put into the F6 in just a sec. Now, insert the SD card into the Zoom F6, close the hatch, and power up however you want to. You can put a L-series battery, you could USB it, you could do AA batteries, whatever it is, make sure you have power to it. And then, this is where people get a little confused, and I need a little refresher every once in a while to remember how to do this. You're going to press the power button and the pause/play button at the same time, and then the firmware update prompts will come up. Now, you're gonna see, do you wanna update the firmware? It will show you the firmware that you're going from to where you're going to. And you're gonna say update. Well, you're not gonna say it, you're gonna click it. You know what I mean. It's not voice activated, at least not yet. I doubt it'll ever be a thing. Now, this is kind of a step, but just pay attention. Don't turn it off while you're updating this. It's just not worth the hassle. Of course, things can happen, and maybe your power source isn't reliable, but make sure it's reliable. It doesn't take that long to update this firmware, so don't screw it up by just having something weird happen. So be careful, don't turn it off. But once it's done, you could turn it off, because you have to turn it off to actually allow it to reset. So once it says it's complete, turn off the F6. Now, once it's completely off, you could turn it back on and double check that the firmware update actually went through. Now, what you're going to do is look in the bottom right corner on startup, and it will show the firmware 1.9. But if you look away for a sec or whatever it is and you don't see it, you could follow these steps to go find it in the menu. You're gonna go to menu, go to system, and firmware version. At this point, you will see the firmware version that is in the F6. Now that we know how to update the F6, and a little refresher for some of you, and if you skipped ahead, welcome back, or welcome previously, because you know what I'm talking about. You were here before everyone else. So let's talk about what this update has to offer. So there are two parts to this update. The first one, when the recording setting mode was float 32, entering and exiting the card reader in the USB menu would cause fader settings to change. Now, I did notice this a couple of times, but it wasn't that big of a deal that I couldn't fix it right away. I just literally turned the knob, turned off the track, turned it back on, and it worked. It was a bit of a hassle, but for the most part, it wasn't that big of a deal. But now that I know that it was fixed in this update, now hopefully it doesn't come up again. And I can't guarantee that it won't for everyone, but I can guarantee that it was addressed in this update. The second one is when checking 32-bit float wave files in the F6 Control app Finder, the recording format would be shown incorrectly as 32 kilobits per second. Now, this is just a labeling issue. This is a labeling problem. It doesn't necessarily affect the file itself. It was just labeled wrong. Instead of saying bit depth or bit, it said kilobits per second. So it was a wrong label on it, and now it is fixed. And for the most part, no one probably even noticed it. You probably just brushed it off or just saw 32 and just let it go. So this is not a big deal, but if it was for you an issue, let me know down in the comments. And for both of these, let me know down in the comments if these issues were affecting you and if it was fixed when you updated the firmware. All right, so now we went through those two updates. I really don't think they're major updates. They're very minor. They could affect you in one way. I think the first one was more, I guess, quote unquote, detrimental to the performance of the F6. But for the most part, at least in my comments section, not many people have brought up things that they've wanted for an update. Little bits and pieces here and there, but a lot of these issues are physical, meaning it's about the physical device itself. And for me, sure, could the screen be bigger? Could the user interface be a little more nice? But with the app and things being just getting used to, I don't really have a problem with this thing. And yes, I do have a bias. I know I cover this thing a lot, and it is an investment that I made a while back, actually 2.5 years ago or something like that. And sure, I'm invested, but I definitely feel like they can only address certain things, and physical things are unfortunately not addressable. A future F6 and Mark II, or an F6N, whatever it is, F6 Pro, whatever they want to call it, possibly could come, but I don't know. I think with the F6 or the F8 and Pro, I think that's what they're calling it, with the 32-bit float, now that that's out and the price increases of the F6, that price is so close. So I think it's like around no more than $500 more. At that price, if you're really considering getting a new device nowadays, you might want to consider getting the F8. And I know it's a little overkill for some people, but you could be future-proofing. And that F8N, now that it has 32-bit float, it's game-changing, especially at the price point. The price point isn't that much more, especially when you think of gear and think of things that you're investing in over time. The F6 is great. I love it. I wouldn't take it back investing in it for anything, especially at the time when there was the Misc 3 Pre, I think was the other one with 32-bit, and the F8 only had 24-bit. But if I was to go back and the F8N Pro was available, I probably would go for the F8N Pro because of the 32-bit float. The major reason why I bought the F6 was because of the 32-bit float. Now with devices having it more available, I think that the F8N Pro would be a good investment for right now, rather than the F6. But that's just my opinion. I still recommend the F6 if you're not looking to spend that extra cash, or if you don't need the extra 2 inputs. It's really about the user interface. If you find it easier to use a device like a rack mount type thing with the F8, then that's for you. But if you don't really care and you want to save a little bit of cash, the F6 is incredible. It's great. I work jobs and do this channel with it every single time, and I really can't ask for much more. The F3 is another question. Maybe one day I'll pick one up because, I don't know, it might be useful to doing interview style stuff and not have to hook up the F6 with all the inputs. Maybe it's a little easier. Maybe just hook it to my belt. And that's all I got to say about the Zoom F6 1.9 update. If you have any questions, comments, or anything whatsoever, leave it down in the comment section. All I ask is you be nice and just have a conversation with me. Don't start bashing things about the F6 or whatever it is. Just be nice. Let's have a conversation. Also, if you found this video helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing for more videos like this, more tech videos, F6 stuff. There's a ton of F6 stuff on this channel, so go check it out. There's a playlist for long form and short form. Short form being less than 10 minutes. That's just how I qualify it. And long form being more. and there's a ton of stuff. And if you have any suggestions for more videos about the F6, I do have one thing planned. I might have more, but I definitely have one more thing planned for the near future. Actually, I think it might be coming out this week, so keep an eye out for that. And that's all I gotta say. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you rebels in the next video.